Welcome to episode 122 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing screenwriters Marilyn Anderson and Richard Rossner. They wrote an independent, family-friendly film called How to Beat a Bully. We walk through the early parts of their careers and how they got their start in the business, and then we talk about this film specifically and how they ended up getting it produced after many, many years. So stay tuned for that. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on the blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 122. I just want to mention a free webinar that I'm doing on Wednesday, June 8th at 10 a.m. The webinar is called How to Effectively Market Your Screenplay and Sell It. I'm going to go through all the various online channels that are available to screenwriters and give you my unfiltered opinion of them. I get questions all the time about the blacklist, about Inktip, about which contests to enter. I've tried pretty much every marketing channel available to screenwriters, and so I'm going to go through each channel and I'm going to share my experiences with them. Again, this webinar is completely free. Don't worry if you can't make it to the live event. I'll be recording this event, so if you sign up for the webinar and you can't make it, I will be sending out a link to the recorded event so you can listen to it after the fact whenever is convenient for you. To sign up, just go to www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/free webinar, and free webinar is all lowercase and all one word, so that's just sellingyourscreenplay.com/free webinar. I will, of course, link to it in the show notes. Also, if you already are on my email list, you don't need to register again. Anyone who is on my email list already, I will send out an email to those folks, basically just telling them when the webinar is and how to sign up and how to access the webinar when it's time. So if you're already on my email list, you don't need to sign up again. But if it's something you would like to attend, just go to, again, sellingyourscreenplay.com/free webinar. You just put in your name and your email address, and then I will email you specific directions on how to log in when it's time for the webinar. Quick few words about what I'm working on. So once again, the main thing I'm working on is pre-production for my crime action thriller film called The Pinch. The shoot dates are pretty much locked up now. The plan is to shoot from July 9th, which is a Saturday, through July 29th, which is a Friday. We'll be shooting 3 weeks. We'll be taking off Mondays and Tuesdays, so we'll be shooting Saturday, Sunday, taking off Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So it'll basically be a Wednesday through Sunday. That gives us some flexibility in the schedule. There's going to be, a micro budget film like this. A lot of people are not getting paid, so a lot of people have, regular jobs. So it's going to be nice to be able to shoot on those weekends, have that flexibility for some people that need the scheduling only to be there on the weekends. It will also help with locations. There's probably going to be a few locations or 1 or 2 locations that are only available, or they're available cheaper on the weekends. So hopefully we can get all that scheduling in place and utilize those weekends. But weekends are a good time to shoot. Traffic is less here in LA, so it's easier to get to the location. And then, as I said, it gives a lot of flexibility with the schedule. I did a lot of meetings last week. I think I talked about that on the podcast. So I did go and meet with some potential PAs, some potential production coordinators, some potential associate producers, and some potential first assistant directors. And I looked at one possible location. It was actually just a very minor location, an office and a sort of a cubicle-looking office. There's like one main office and then a cubicle. So 2 office settings, which are different places in the script, but we could probably shoot them at this one particular place. So just one minor location, but probably one day is all we would be there. But I did look at that just to get a feel for kind of what's out there and how much it might cost. And this company also does like insurance and grip packages and stuff. So I hopefully can cut some sort of a deal with them where I'll get some lighting and grip equipment, and then maybe the production insurance, and then, as I said, maybe 1 or 2 days of location shooting as well. So I'm just basically trying to bring on crew now as quickly as possible, really beef that up, and then probably in another few weeks I will start really digging into casting. The casting, especially on a low budget, a micro budget film like this, the longer you can wait, in some ways, the better off you are, just because you'll know the people's schedule. And it's the same thing with crew, but I'm trying to be a little bit flexible with the crew. But the bottom line is, when you're not really paying a decent rate for these crew positions, or even to the actors, if something comes up, if they get booked on another job, they will obviously just abandon you. So it's better to wait a little bit closer to the date, and then you can really lock these people up. They'll have a better idea if they actually have something scheduled during those dates. So it's kind of a balancing act, trying to get people on now. You want to get them on as far in advance as possible. But at the flip side, that since you're not really paying a lot of money to these people, that these people may not end up actually showing up on the shoot date. Hopefully they'll give us some notice. But so that's kind of the balance. And I think it's kind of the same location, the same 4 locations. I think in some ways, we're going to need to wait probably maybe a month before we shoot to really lock the locations, or even 2 or 3 weeks on some of the locations. Because again, people that have the locations, they're going to be looking for bigger paydays. In the case of the house, most of the script takes place at a house. And so that's probably like almost half of our 15-day shooting schedule, probably more than half, probably 8-9 days will be at this house. Of the 15 days, probably 8-9 days will be at this house. So if I get a house that someone is trying to sell, or someone's trying to rent out, they're not going to necessarily want to do that months in advance. They're going to want to wait. If they don't have anybody that's going to be renting the house for those weeks, then they might be willing to rent it to us and make some money just while they're trying to actually lock down a full-time renter. So again, it's a little bit of a balancing act, but that's what I'm kind of working on. I'm just trying to get as much stuff in place as I possibly can. And the next, I'd say, big sort of script thing is, as a director, I'm going to start going through the screenplay. I want to get a lock script. I've got some more tweaks. I brought on a friend of mine to be production designer. We had a nice conversation last week. He had some good ideas for production design. I want to go in and kind of write those into the script. So there's still some tweaks I'm doing to that. Hopefully I'll get that all locked down this week. And then I got to start doing the shot list. I'm really going to try and get the shot list done by the end of May. And then that will kind of give me, I'm going to try, and I'll be working on these other things as well, crewing up, casting, and getting locations during May as well. But hopefully I'll have the shot list by the end of May. And then by the time June comes in, I can really grind down on any of these loose ends that I'm having trouble filling, any parts in the cast I'm having trouble filling, any locations I'm having trouble filling, if I have a solid month. So we're starting July 9th. So if by June 9th I have a shot list and most of my cast and crew in place, I think I'll be in pretty good shape. And then I can start to just finish up any little last minute odds and ends. And it's going to be the hard stuff, the hard stuff to get, the hard roles to cast, the hard locations to get. That's what's that final month is going to be working towards. Anyway, so that's what I'm working on mostly right now. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I'm interviewing screenwriters Marilyn Anderson and Richard Rossner. Here is the interview. Welcome, Marilyn and Richard, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me.
It's great to be here, Ashley.
Really looking forward to today's interview.
So to start out, maybe you guys can just give us a quick overview of your background, kind of how you got into the industry, and maybe made that first script sale. Marilyn, why don't you go ahead and start?
Well, the interesting thing was I did not start out as a writer. I actually have a couple degrees in biology and physiology, and I was working as a scientist, and then one day I said, I don't want to do this. I want to be a star. So I quit my job and sold my car and sold my furniture and sold my boyfriend. Didn't get much for him. And I moved to New York to become a star. And I got into a Broadway show like the first week I got there, and I sang and danced and acted, and then I did some stand-up. And then one day I knew I either had to take a vacation or get a job. Well, let's see, vacation or job. So I took a vacation, and I came out to L.A., and here I thought I was going to be acting, but I started writing, and I wrote my first screenplay. And everyone said to me, literally, they said, you will never get an agent, you will never get anyone to look at it. And I didn't listen to them, thankfully. And I had a neighbor who knew somebody at a big, big agency, and she said, give him a call. And I called, and I said, will you read my script? And he said, yes. And 3 weeks later, he called, and he said, this is a great script. We want to represent it. And this was like my first shot out. And so it was very exciting. And so don't listen to naysayers when they say you can't do it. And actually, that script made me a lot of money. I got it optioned here and there, but it never got made in that particular incarnation. But then the first thing that I sold was actually a half-hour script, and I sold a lot of half hours. But that first one, just don't listen when people say you can't do it.
Yeah, and that was a feature film, not a TV script.
It was a feature film, yeah. But then I switched over to TV and had a lot of success writing TV shows. And with those, I just wrote spec scripts. And actually, my first spec TV show that I sold was, at the time, I didn't know anybody in the business when I came out here. And at the time, I was taking temp jobs in the show business industry. And so I worked a temp job on a sitcom just for 3 days. And the boss said to me, "Will you stay?" And I said, "Well, I'll stay, but I'm a writer, so if I get meetings, I want to go. And if you'll let me, I want to pitch to you." So about halfway through the season, he said, "Okay, I don't have a show. You want to pitch something?" I said, "Okay." And I was ready with a pitch. And, of course, he had read a spec script of mine. And he said, "If I give you the rest of the week off, can you write it? And we need it by Monday." So that's how I sold my first sitcom script.
Huh. Yeah, great story. Just one quick question. So you said this initial feature film spec, you had a neighbor who had a friend at a big agency. I always just like to get a sort of a sense of the scope. Had you been sending it out to other people as well? Like, did other people look at it, or was that literally the first person you sent it to?
Well, here's a funny story. I mean, he was one of the first people that I sent it to, but I also at the time had met another gal, and we wrote a script together, and she told me to take a class with her. So I took a screenwriting course, and the teacher was really kind. Every week he would read a different script, and to the terrible scripts he was really kind. But when he got to my script, he literally ripped it to shreds. And the only reason I didn't feel bad was after class I told him, "Oh, this week I heard from CAA and I heard from Billy Crystal's agent, and they both want to do it." So you can't even always listen to teachers because you have to be careful, because there's chocolate and vanilla. Some people hate chocolate, but all you need is one production company or one star or one person to say yes, and boom, you've got a movie.
Yeah. So, Richard, maybe you can kind of fill us in on the details of your early career.
Sure. I grew up in New Jersey and really a stone's throw from New York. So I was going to Broadway to watch plays. My parents were really terrific. They made sure that I saw the plays that were coming out. And I tell you, the first time I saw a full-on Broadway musical, I went, that is it. This is what I want to do. So I was always torn between acting and writing. And ultimately what happened after graduating from college, I was making the rounds in New York, trying out for shows. There was a television show that I was up for. I got a call back. A friend of mine who I went to high school with got a call back. He wound up in the show, and that show was Welcome Back, Kotter, if you remember that show.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Well, that was Juan Epstein. Robert Hedges, who played Juan Epstein, was a good buddy of mine, and he used to call me up when the rates would change in California. So it's 11 o'clock at night, the telephone rates would change. He would call me, wake me up at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, "Dick, you got to come out here. There's work out here." So I told him I would come out for a visit. That was all. 2 weeks. He said, "Bring an extra suitcase because you'll need the extra underwear if you decide to stay." Well, I came out, I saw there was work, and I decided to stay. I was working with a writing partner at the time, a fellow, Bob Silberg, a guy that I knew from college, and we decided to make a go of it. So we had written a terrific Bob Newhart show spec script, and that spec script got us an episode of Welcome Back, Kotter. Bobby had nothing to do with us getting there, but we had an agent who submitted it. We wound up writing for that show. We did a couple of other things, but that relationship eventually petered out. We're still good friends. But then I wound up partnering with another dear friend of mine, and we wound up working on She's the Sheriff, which was, I guess you would call it Suzanne Summers' first comeback vehicle to television after Three's Company that she doesn't admit to. But we did that. We had a great time, and that eventually led to me working on the Live Aid concert in 1985, which was really a thrill and really the most important thing I think I've ever written. It was really so gratifying to be able to work on something that was making a difference in the world. But eventually I wound up working on Full House with that partner, And after that experience, we eventually broke up, and then Marilyn and I ran into each other, and we decided to make a go of it, and we started working on ideas for films and television, and so here we are now.
Yeah. So let me backtrack a little bit there, Richard. You said at one point you had this agent. Maybe you can just kind of fill us in on some of the details about how you actually got that agent.
Well, now this is interesting. So Bobby's good friend was he was an agent here in town, and he was working at William Morris. And he said, if you come out here, I've read what you've written. I like what you've written. I'd like to bring you into William Morris. We said, okay, great. The day we got out here, we found out that he, along with several other agents, defected from William Morris. So we now had no agent except William Morris assigned us to somebody else. So we wound up working with that agent for a while. So we were very fortunate that we had a place to begin. Mm-hmm. And William Morris was a good place to begin, I got to tell you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's dig into How to Beat a Bully. Maybe to start out, you can just give us a quick logline or pitch for the film, just to kind of fill us in on what the story's all about.
Well, the story is about, it's when a new kid moves to town and he's picked on by school bullies. He decides he has to come up with something to keep them off of his back. So after watching TV at night, he sees something, and he ends up telling them that his father is a hitman for the mob. Well, of course, nobody believes him, but then through a series of misunderstandings, the whole town starts believing it's true. And ultimately, the real mob finds out, and they capture the father, and the kid and his friends have to save his dad from the mob.
Okay, yeah, that's a good summation. So where did this idea come from?
Well, we started working on this project after we saw Home Alone back in 1990. That gives you an idea of how long sometimes it takes to get something done. We saw that the family market was a good market, and we started tossing around ideas for family-oriented stories that would have universal appeal. And as we started talking about different topics and different themes, we discovered that we both had been bullied at various times growing up, and we thought, there's probably something there. So we looked for a very clever, fun, comedic way to handle that topic. And so we developed this story. We wrote a screenplay. And at the time, we wound up getting an agent based on the strength of that screenplay. It went out, and 14 different studios wanted to do it. There was going to be a big bidding war. And we were very excited about the prospects of it all. But as sometimes happens, timing was a little bit off. Some other family comedies came out that didn't do so well, and so suddenly people stopped doing family comedies. But over the next several years, we had another 8 producers option the film. And we've had big producers, big directors, big stars, a lot of people involved with it, but it just never happened.
Actually, I think in the beginning there weren't 14 studios. We met with a lot of different producers at the major studios. But it is true that we had like 8 different options over time. And finally, I'm the one who said, no more options. We got to do something differently because this isn't working. We'd even won a couple of screenwriting competitions. So I said, we're just not optioning it anymore. And it's amazing, Ashley, because as soon as we decided no more options, that's when things started to happen. And I found an investor who loved the project, and he said, you got to make this. And so he put some money into our fund. And then I teamed up with Dream Factory Entertainment. I ran into Robert Duddleson at a party, and they had just done a couple of other kids' films, so they knew the genre very well. They brought in another investor, and within six months we were cast and in production. And, you know, it only took all those years and all those things falling out to have it finally come together so that we went out and we just made the film. And it's very exciting after all this time. And this way also, because I was one of the exec producers, and Richard was also like a producer, even though he doesn't get credit for that on the film, but he was amazing as a part of the team. We had a lot more input into it because we didn't do it as a studio, although we did have to lower the budget considerably.
Yeah. So, and that's interesting to me that you're telling me you guys came up with this idea in 1990, because one of the things when it was first, I got the email to potentially interview you guys, I thought, oh, it's a movie about bullying. And that's something that's kind of top of the mind right now. It's a, kind of a big issue that people are sort of grappling with. And I wonder if just the timing was right for that. Did that sort of, just bullying is in sort of the collective conscious now. Did that impact, do you think, these investors coming on board?
I think, well, part of it was, I have to tell, as I said, it had won several contests, but this script had a few different titles at different times. And even though it had the theme of anti-bullying, it was called Son of a Gun at one time. It was called Kid Fellas at one time. And I must admit, I had the idea. I said, bullying is such a hot topic, we should really highlight that in the title. And that's when we changed the title to How to Beat a Bully. So, as your viewers might want to know, titles are very important. It's just like a book, the cover of a book and the title of a book is so important. Well, the same thing is true with the movie. So I think that it was a combination of factors. It was that the timing was right, that we changed the title, and that just the fates were with us now to finally get it out there.
That was really the best marketing move, I think, that we made with that, Marilyn. So you're absolutely right. All praise due to you.
Yeah. Those other titles sound very clever too.
Yeah, well, they were fun. Son of a Gun had the sort of double entendre, and Kid Fellas was off.
Yeah.
Good Fellas.
We were actually approached by somebody who had some mafia ties. He was developing a show called Son of a Gun, and he said, "I don't think you want to do this thing." So we changed the title.
So one of the things that occurs to me, I have two young children, a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, so I've been watching a lot of kids' movies, and I wonder, is there some sort of maybe it would be a book or a website where you could kind of get the rules? Like one thing I noticed in this movie was no one is ever carrying a gun, even though, if this was in real life, you would think these mobsters probably would have guns. Are there some rules that maybe you guys just know, being in the industry, that say, okay, kids' movies can do this, but they can't do this?
It's so funny that you bring that up, because our very first initial draft that went out and that we took meetings all over with did have guns in it. The mob did have guns, and I don't remember whether the kids ended up getting a hold of them, but in one of the many times that it was optioned, because every time you option it, the producing entity always wants you to make some changes. Mm-hmm. And one of the producers that had optioned it said, you need to take out the guns. And we said, it's got mobsters. How can we take out guns? But we went back to the writing table and we creatively came up with how to get rid of guns. In fact, in a previous draft, which was, as I said, bigger and more complex because we had a bigger budget, we have the mob guys explaining why they never used guns, which is really funny. But unfortunately, we didn't have the time or the number of scenes or shooting days to put it in this. But we even developed funny reasons why the mobsters don't carry guns.
But I'll tell you, Ashley, that actually brings up an interesting point. Each time we did a rewrite for a particular producer, and certainly when we came to Dream Factory Entertainment, because they had restrictions, budgetary restrictions, it forced the creative side, the creativity, to try and find ways to lose scenes, rewrite scenes, make them smaller, make them more compact, but still have them be funny. And actually, it's odd, but some of the funniest lines that we came up with in the last go around came out of that pressure that creativity and budgetary considerations puts on the writers.
Yeah. So it doesn't sound like there's any kind of specific rule book. It sounds like it's really just a matter of talking with, I guess the producers or investors and kind of just feeling them out, what they think is appropriate.
Well, for kids' rules, I think there is a site, the Dove Foundation, and it's not rules, but they do reviews for kids and family-friendly movies. And happily, we got the Dove approval for ages 12 and up, even though I think younger kids and adults enjoy it. But they have on their website, which is from the Dove organization, And they rate you according to like violence, according to language, according to, I guess, any kinds of sexual scenes. So if you are trying to do a family film and you want to be squeaky clean, you might take a look at the Dove organization and look at what things they rate. And then, they have certain ratings depending on what the language is and whether you say things or whether you do things. So.
Yeah. Okay, so let's dig into the writing, the collaborative writing process. I know there's a lot of people who listen to this podcast that have writing partners. I've written a lot of scripts with other partners, so I'm always just curious to kind of find out how other writing teams work. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit. Are you guys in the same room? Do you come up with an outline, then divide up the scenes? Do you write the scenes together? Kind of how does that all work for you guys?
Well, I think, Ashley, both of us actually have written with other partners as well, and also written alone. But I have to say, Richard is my favorite partner, and I'd much rather write with Richard than write alone. I think there's something about writing with somebody, especially when you're doing comedy, that there's a feedback that's wonderful. And when we first got together, we did write in the same room. But because Richard then moved to Arizona, and now he moved back, but he lives in Woodland Hills, we found that we don't have to be in the same room, but we spend a lot of time on the phone together. And always what we do is we break the story first. And we talk about what we want to do and what the characters are going to be and what the story is going to be. And so we come to an outline, and we have a beat sheet before we start writing any scenes. And then, Richard, why don't you tell them how we go on with the scenes?
Right. Basically what we do is we decide which scene we're going to do first, and we have our basic outline of that particular scene, and then we each go off and we write our version of the scene. And when we're done, we call and we go over, we read each other's scene, and we do a process, I guess you would call it advanced smushing. We smush the best of both scenes together in one terrific scene. And it's crazy, but that seems to work.
And one of the reasons I think this is so good is then our first draft actually becomes like a third draft, because I've written like my scenes, he's written his scenes, and then we put them together and we take the best of both. So once in a while, if he has a feeling for something, he'll go off and he'll write it, or I'll write something first and then give it to him. But when we're actually in the process of creating together, we feel that by each of us taking a pass at the scene, it really doesn't stifle either of our creativities. We can each come up with something and not be held to, oh, don't do this, don't do that. So we get to go wherever we want to go. And then I say, oh, that was really funny. I like that. And he said, oh, I like that. And we come up with something that, as I said, is more like a third draft than a first draft.
Yeah. And just technically, what are you guys using? Are you using something like Google Apps where you're both looking at a screen that you can share and both type on? Like, how are you actually both looking at these identical pages?
We do it a simple way. We do it by phone, and then we email each other the script.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm just always curious to know what tools might be used.
It's not very sexy, but it works.
Yeah. So how much time would you guys say you spend on creating the beat sheet and the outline before you actually start writing? Just, roughly speaking, and we can talk specifically about this script or just in general.
Well, I think that the outline, and of course things can change after you start writing because the characters will take on a life of their own. But I really feel that you want a really solid outline before you start. And I don't know what it would take, a week, maybe 2 weeks.
I was going to say a week or so. The last one we did, I think, took us about a week to put together.
Okay, so that's pretty quick. And then how long does it take you to actually write the script pages and smush them together?
Well, actually, we just wrote a new script, and I would say 6 to 8 weeks probably for a draft that we're really comfortable with. We might have, other things, but we know that we got to go back and fix them. But certainly, I think it takes a good 6 to 8 weeks to have something that's well crafted and that's polished and that and that you feel it's okay to like start maybe getting some feedback on?
I'll tell you, Ashley, one of the tricks that we've used really successfully is when we begin, we will look at the characters and we will cast the film with actors who have played similar roles. And when we cast it that way in our minds, we can hear more clearly what those characters sound like. So it helps in the writing process a great deal.
Yeah, yeah. So what does your daily routine look like once you've done the outline and you start actually writing the pages? How many hours a day would you say you actually write?
All of them?
8 or 10 hours a day. You'll put in a full day just cranking out pages.
If we're in the process of like writing something on a deadline, absolutely. I mean, we've been in the situation. We just, as I said, we just wrote a script that hopefully is going to get shot later this year, and there were days when we would work from 10 in the morning till 11 at night straight with no break. Mm-hmm. Would you say that, Richard?
Absolutely. But having a deadline, obviously, with somebody who's paying you helps fuel all of that. But that's the way it has to go. Other times, if we don't have as much pressure, we have other lives, we have other things that we're doing, so we'll go in and out of it.
Yeah, yeah. So we kind of you guys talked about how you wrote this and optioned it 8 times, and then eventually found some equity to get invested into this film. So maybe we can skip ahead a little bit to distribution. Once you guys finished the film, what was your first step in getting a distributor? Does a film like this go to film festivals? Did you have some connections in distribution already lined up?
Well, this is really interesting because we had never been on the other side of this before. It was always a question of you sell a script to somebody, they give you the money, and then they go and take what they do with it. But as I said, because we were the genesis of this, we had a lot more input, if not control. We don't have control, but we certainly have input. And the one thing that I would say would help everyone, if you are going to do a film, is, and which we didn't do, was if you can put a name in the script, put a star in, even if it's only one name, because with the big distributors, they really want name value. And because this was a kids movie, we really didn't think we needed that celebrity. And I think certainly all the actors we got are fabulous and probably better than some names would be. But I think that is one thing that made it difficult to get a big-time distributor, because we did not have a named star. That being said, we had a number of distributors who liked it, but again, they ran into the problem that there was no star. So I had run into Linda Nelson, who is with Indie Rights, and they have a really good model for independent films, and that's so we decided to go with them. And, of course, they put it up on all the digital platforms such as Amazon and iTunes and Hulu and Google Play. But for us, the big deal was getting a Walmart deal, because that's very, very unusual for a little indie film. So we're very excited about that.
Yeah. No, that's great. So how can people see How to Beat a Bully? Do you guys know the release date, when it's going to be available on demand and in stores and stuff?
Well, it's out now. Actually, okay. Today is the launch date, April 5th. It came out at Walmart stores today, which, as I said, is really very exciting for a little film like ours. But they can also see it online at Amazon or iTunes or Google Play. And, Richard, do you have anything to add on that?
No, just that it's, I can't wait. As soon as this interview is over, I'm running out to Walmart to see if it's at our local Walmart right out here in the Valley.
Yeah.
But by the way, we also have our website, which is www.howtobeatabullythemovie.com. And we're also on Facebook, facebook.com/howtobeatabully.
Perfect. And that was going to actually be my last question. How can people? I'll definitely get those websites and the Facebook page, and I'll put those in the show notes so people can click over to those easily. But are you guys on Twitter or Facebook, or you have a blog yourself? Just anything you feel comfortable sharing, so people can maybe keep up with your careers and kind of just follow along with what you guys are doing.
Well, we're both on Facebook, and we don't have a blog yet. But if they go to the Facebook page for How to Beat a Bully. And also, we're so excited about the Walmart that we're asking people to take a picture of them with the DVD at Walmart or buying it, and we're going to sponsor some kind of contest. So maybe we'll give a free consultation to somebody who has the best selfie with our DVD at Walmart or something. We haven't figured it out yet, but I just came up with that because somebody sent me a picture, our first photo of the DVD at Walmart.
That's great. Is there someplace people can send those? I can definitely mention that.
Well, they could put it on Facebook or go to our Facebook page with facebook.com/howtobeatabully and post it there. Yeah.
Perfect. Yep, that would be great. Well, Marilyn and Richard, I really appreciate you guys coming on the show. This has been a great interview. I really enjoyed the movie. This is the first time I've had someone on where I could actually watch the movie with my kids, and my kids enjoyed it too. So I really appreciate that.
That's great, Ashley.
We're also coming out with a book too, How to Beat a Bully. We should tell you that too. We're writing the novel version as well. Perfect.
When will that be out?
Later this year. We're not sure yet, but
okay. Perfect. Well, once again, Richard and Marilyn, I really appreciate your coming on and talking with me.
Thanks so much, Ashley. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, guys.
It's been wonderful. Thanks so much, Ashley.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later. A quick plug for the SYS Screenwriting Analysis Service. It's a really economical way to get a high-quality professional evaluation on your screenplay. When you buy our 3-pack, you get evaluations at just $67 per script for feature films and just $55 for teleplays. All the readers have professional experience reading for studios, production companies, contests, and agencies. You can read a short bio of each reader on our website, and you can pick the reader who you think is the best fit for your script. Turnaround time is usually just a few days, but rarely more than a week. The readers will evaluate your script on 6 key factors: concept, characters, structure, marketability, tone, and overall craft, which includes formatting, spelling, and grammar issues. Every script will get a grade of pass, consider, or recommend, and this should roughly help you understand where your script might rank if you were to submit it to a production company or agency. We provide analysis on features and television scripts. We will do an analysis on 1-hour television scripts or half-hour television scripts. We also do proofreading without any analysis. We will also look at a treatment or outline and give you the same analysis on it. So if you're looking to vet some of your projects, this is a great way to do it. We will also write a logline and synopsis for you, so you can add this service to an analysis, or you can simply purchase it as a standalone product. As a bonus, if your script gets a grade of recommend from a reader, you get a free email and fax blast to my list of industry contacts. This is the exact same blast service I use myself to promote my own scripts, and it's the same service I sell on the website. It's a great way to get your script into the hands of producers who are looking for material. So if you want a professional evaluation of your screenplay at a very reasonable price, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing writer-director William Liu. William just finished production on his debut feature film called Comfort, which he wrote and directed. He's got a lot of great practical advice for anyone planning on shooting their own film. He's another filmmaker that came up doing short films, and now this is his feature film debut. So a lot of great information just about pushing your career along using short films and then ultimately a feature film. To wrap things up, I just want to touch on a few things from today's interview with Marilyn and Richard. I spend a lot of time on this podcast talking about genre films, and usually that it means horror, sci-fi, thrillers, low-budget action. Those are sort of the typical movies when people say genre films that people are thinking about. But these independent, family-friendly films, I think that they are also part of this sort of these. When someone says genre films, I think independent, family-friendly films are also genre films. And lots of producers I talk with, they tell me family-friendly films are still a good investment. A lot of producers are looking for this type of material. It's something that can play worldwide. It's something that there's still a big market for. And when I say a big market, one of the things that has collapsed for most of the film business and most genres is the DVD market. 10, 12, 15, 20 years ago, that was, maybe 20 years ago, it was VHS tapes, but there used to be a big sort of aftermarket where people would rent the tapes, they would rent the DVDs or buy the DVDs, and that has really gone away. But for family-friendly films, there is still a market for these DVDs. Places like Walmart can throw these family-friendly films up in their store, and they will sell some units. And I can attest to this as a parent myself. I haven't bought a DVD for myself. I honestly don't even remember. It could have been decades. I don't remember the last time I bought a DVD for myself, but I buy DVDs for my kids. I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I buy DVDs for them all the time. We have stacks of DVDs. We get all the new Disney movies that come out, Frozen, and I'm trying to think of some of the last ones. But we went back and bought almost all of those Disney movies, The Lion King, and all of those sort of classic Disney kids movies. We've gone back and buy, but we buy a ton of ones, even some smaller ones we might see in the store, and they're cheap enough, and we'll pick them up. So I think that sort of mentality is still out there. I think that's probably why there's still people buying these DVDs, family-friendly DVDs, because the kids like to watch movies over and over again. I think adults probably not so much, but I think kids, they like it. There's still, if the internet connection goes down, yes, you can get these digital copies, but then that's a problem. Sometimes it's nice in the car. It's nice to just have that portable DVD player, stick a DVD in, and the kids can watch it on road trips and stuff. And it's going to be a while before sort of a downloadable content replaces that, because there's some sort of convenience in having that physical DVD, being able to just pop it into the player. So I think this is the bottom line, is I think that there's still going to be a market for these family-friendly movies for some time to come. The irony of all of this is that I think most writers, and again, I include myself in this, most people who go into screenwriting, they don't want to write this type of script. So really think about that. There are producers looking for family-friendly scripts, and there aren't as many screenwriters writing this type of material. So, I don't know if anything, I would say there's a shortage of scripts. I'm sure there's still a lot of family-friendly scripts floating around out there, but just percentage-wise, there's going to be more producers looking for this while less writers are writing this. And I'm opposing, that's opposed to sort of the independent, quirky comedy, which, I just talked to new writers, and there's so many people that have written, the quirky drama or the quirky, dramedy, and lots of people get into screenwriting because that's the kind of stories they want to tell. But for all practical purposes, there is no market for those films. And one of the vibrant markets in the industry is family-friendly material. So I would highly encourage anyone who has a good idea for a family-friendly film, go out and write it up and start trying to market it and send it out, especially if you can write in such a way that it could be produced on a relatively small budget. I know that there's a lot of producers out there looking to create this type of content, and so there is a good market for it. In the interview, Marilyn mentioned the Dove Foundation. I will link to their website in the show notes. I don't have any experience with the Dove Foundation. None of my films have been family friendly, so it's not something that I've really gone the road. It's not a road I've gone down, and so I don't necessarily have firsthand knowledge of this. But it is the Dove Foundation is something that comes up in conversations. Other producers I have heard mention to it. It's something that, as screenwriters, I have screenwriter friends. It's come up in conversation. So I think this is an excellent suggestion from Marilyn. I think going to the Dove Foundation website and looking up the types of films that are getting good ratings from them. There is definitely a religious angle to it, and like one of their stamps of approval is like faith-based. So you might not fit into that. It might not be a faith-based, but that doesn't mean you can't get the seal of approval from them. So go to their website and just give it a look. Look at some of the movies they've got. Big movies. The Jungle Book. I was just at their website this morning, and they've got a review of the Jungle Book. So they're reviewing big movies and obviously smaller movies as well. From what I've heard, places like Walmart, they look at that seal of approval from the Dove Foundation with high regard. So if you write a family-friendly film, you will ultimately need to understand what the Dove Foundation is all about and how to go about getting a rating for it. But I think from a screenwriting perspective, you need to look at the films and understand the landscape and not do things in your script/movie that will not work with the Dove Foundation. So you don't want to write what you think is a family-friendly movie only to find out that it's not really family-friendly because of whatever sexual content, violent content, maybe there's certain different subject matters that they're just not going to necessarily give their seal of approval to. So check out the website and think about how that might impact your writing. I also thought it was interesting what they said about the title change. This is another really interesting point. I think it's something that a lot of screenwriters don't spend enough time on. In the SYS forum, I've been reviewing log lines for, years and years, hundreds of them. And so with the log line generally comes the title of the script. So I see a ton of script titles. I see so many titles that don't really convey very much meaning. And you can certainly make an argument. There are some great movies that their titles don't. And I mean, something like Star Wars. I mean, sure, that conveys a lot of meaning now. But when Star Wars came out back in 1976, I don't know that conveyed a ton of meaning. It was not something that was sort of in the vocabulary. So I don't know that this is necessarily mandatory. Hey, you have to have a great title for your movie to succeed. But I do think it's an opportunity for you to enhance your pitch. And if you have a title that really can sum up what your script is about and what the market is that your script is going for, I think that can really help conveying as much meaning, in as few words as possible. I mean, that's really what writing is all about, conveying meaning and doing it through words, the written word. So coming up with a title that conveys a lot of meaning, I think can really, really enhance your pitch. I think it's if you watch this particular movie, I don't know that this title really accurately describes this film, honestly, but I think it is, bullying is a hot button issue. So I think it's a nice marketing hook. They're able to really hook into that. Bullying is a big sort of thing that's in the news and it's in sort of the collective conscious of, people that live in the United States. It's something that is talked about. It's something that is mentioned. So, hooking your film into something that people are talking about is a great way to do it. And they've done it through the title. And again, bullying is definitely a part of this script of this movie, but I think it's a fairly minor part of it really when the story gets going. And, so again, it's a great marketing hook, and I think it's a lesson that we can learn as writers is making sure that our titles have those hooks. I also think it's interesting to note how long it took these screenwriters to get this film produced. I get a lot of questions from people that are along the lines of, hey, how fast can I sell my screenplay and get paid? And, the sort of the gist of the comment is these people are looking to make money quickly. And, sometimes what Marilyn and Richard just described, lots of optioning the scripts to lots of people falling through. A lot of times that's what it takes. I try and come on this podcast, and one of the reasons why I try and mention the options that I get when I get them is so people can kind of understand that I option a lot of scripts, but those scripts ultimately don't get produced. And that's part of the process. And so it's not going to be a slow process. I'd say if you're looking to make money, like Richard and Marilyn's experience with this is not unusual. I had a script that I optioned in 1999 and eventually did get produced, but the filmmakers, I optioned it in 1999. They ended up buying the script in 2009. So it took them 10 years just to buy the script from me. And then it took them another 3 or 4 years to actually get the film produced by the time they got through post-production. And it's a film called Rushlights. And I think it was 2012 or 2013 was the actual year that it's listed on IMDb that it finally got finished. But as I said, they optioned it in 1999, bought it from me in 2009, and then took them another few years to actually get through production and post-production. So that's like a 13 year run, and it can happen. That's part of the process too. It's not going to be quick and easy. Again, if you're looking to make quick money, I'd say screenwriting is probably not the best way to go about doing it. You do hear these grand stories of, the guy is working as a bartender and has that script and gets it to the right person and gets that, 6-figure or 7-figure deal. It does happen, but, people win the lottery too. So I think that there are other ways of making a lot of money quickly. If that's really your intent, probably screenwriting is not going to be your best bet. Anyway, that's the show. Thank you for listening.